the Department of Agriculture, which is the regulatory agency relating to pesticides, and then in Minnesota, the Board of Water and Soil Resources works with the soil and water conservation districts, watershed districts, watershed management organizations to implement conservation on private lands. So Dan.
Thank you. I'll be focused on private lands and efforts that are underway. I'll talk a bit about the Board of Water and Soil Resources, a bit more about the mission, and some of the things that we're currently doing, then also focus on where we're headed with those efforts. The mission of the Board of Water and Soil Resources is to improve and protect Minnesota's water and soil resources by working in partnership with local organizations. So working in partnerships is a really important part of what we do and how we accomplish the work that we do. Pollinators play a really key role in us accomplishing our work, sustaining ecosystems, sustaining native plant communities, and so it's something that we're very interested in and feel is really important to help us accomplish our goals. There's a few key areas of work for the agency. One is wetland protection, and so administering the Minnesota Wetland Conservation Act. There's about 10.6 million acres of wetland in the state, and so we work on protecting wetlands and then also mitigating wetland losses. Conservation easements is another key area. We have over 250,000 acres in conservation easements, and so these easements restrict any development and retain these as prairies, wetlands, and forests into the future. And then soil and water conservation grants. We focus on projects that clean water, conserve soil, and there's a lot of opportunities with all of these to focus on pollinator habitat. Wetlands definitely play a key role in preserving habitat. Bees use wetlands and wetland plants a lot. The conservation easements, there's a lot of opportunities there for habitat for pollinators and also on these other projects that are focused on soil and water conservation. And I mentioned partnerships, and our funding goes out to local government units who help prioritize projects and then work with private landowners to develop projects. And so there's a lot of different partnerships that we work with, and each individual project tends to have multiple partners working on it. And this is a list of some of the partners that get involved with our projects. There's also a lot of other efforts going on that are helping to assist private landowners. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has a campaign underway. NRCS also has programs that can be used to restore pollinator habitat on private lands. The Xerxes Society has some really good resources that they've been developing. They work nationwide, so check out their website if you're interested in more pollinator resources. The Pollinator Partnership is another group. And so there's a lot of efforts underway. A lot of groups have different initiatives focused on restoring pollinator habitat. So I'm going to focus on a few things that we're currently doing to benefit pollinators. One is promoting high diversity and local sources of plants. And when I started at the agency a few years ago, one of the first things I was asked to do is develop guidelines for our projects to define diversity levels and then also help guide decision-making on the selection of plants. And so we have native vegetation establishment and enhancement guidelines that were developed to help people think through projects and look at diversity levels that would be appropriate for projects. And generally we're promoting high diversity levels. High diversity levels provide a lot of ecosystem functions. They help communities be resilient into the future. And so there's a lot of reasons that we're promoting high diversity. The map on the right shows Minnesota ecological sections and subsections. And so that's one thing that we use to help make decisions about where seed and plants should come from for different projects. And diversity can fit into a lot of different project types. On the left is a rain garden. You know, and it may not be very big, but you can see the butterfly milkweed there. Milkweed are really important plants for a lot of different pollinators in addition to monarch butterflies. The picture up above shows a lake shore that has a lot of diversity in it. There's some butterfly or some marsh milkweed there, along with a lot of other flowers. And another thing that diversity is helping accomplish in these projects is that there's blooms happening through the season. And so we're going to have blooms starting early and then going all the way through the fall with goldenrods and asters. The picture down below is restored wetland, mitigation wetland, and that's all wild bergamot that's down in the planting with the landowner, a lot of goldenrod also. And so there's a lot of opportunities in these projects to restore a lot of diversity, and again, that helps with the resiliency and helping these plantings sustain into the future. There's a number of different resources that we've been developing to help people do projects, whether it's wetland restorations or prairie restorations. We have interseeding guidelines, that's kind of down at the bottom down here, that are intended to guide people to add diversity into projects. We have a lot of early projects like CRP projects, Conservation Reserve Program, that maybe were just grasses. And so we're looking for ways to add diversity and add flowers into those plantings to get a lot more diversity and add benefits for pollinators. And so we've been learning a lot over time on how to do that. We talked about the vegetation guidelines, pollinator plan. We have plant ID resources that we've been developing. The Minnesota Wetland Restoration Guide has been under development for a few years and getting really close to being done. It has a lot of technical information on how to restore different wetland plant communities. And then there's the What's Working webpage, which is a way to get information from people that are working on projects about what's been successful. And so that's been a key part of our resources. And I just wanted to look at this diagram. This kind of shows how we think about our resources. We start with the planning, like the pollinator plan, the technical resources, and then the implementation through these partnerships. And then that leads to the stewardship of these sites. And we need to do management on all these sites to make sure that these diversity levels are maintained over time. So that's a key part of making sure these projects are working and having benefits for pollinators. And then we try to collect that what's working information from people who are doing these projects. That kind of works its way back into these resources. And so all of our resources essentially are being updated each year as we learn more information. And part of the reason I wanted to look at this is because we're still learning a lot about pollinator habitat. I think there's a lot we don't know. And we're really focused on the what's working information this year on pollinator habitat. So I invite any of you that are working on projects with pollinators to send in information about things that have been successful for you, because we're interested in getting those things posted onto the What's Working website. All the information or the resources we were looking at is on this web page. Not sure if everybody can see that in the back, but bowser.state.mn.us /native_vegetation /. This will show up again in a couple slides. And one other thing I wanted to point out here is that we have a featured plant that I write each month, and people can sign up to get the featured plant articles. And we try to also send out information about things that are happening related to native vegetation restoration, wetland restoration, a lot of different topics. And so if you're interested in getting these email updates, go to this page or to Bowser's main web page. You can just search there for native vegetation if you're not seeing the link down there. Other current efforts, Bob talked about some of the things that are important to maintain diversity and pollinator habitat on sites, and so those are things that we're focused on and write quite a bit about in our different resources. So things like prescribed burning, conservation grazing, spot treatment of weeds, or biocontrol also we're focused on to try to minimize chemical use. So trying to find ways that we can maintain that diversity over time. We're also focusing on combining ecological services or functions on sites. The more we can combine these, I think, the better use of land. So sites can do carbon sequestration. We have really deep roots with prairie plants that can help bring carbon into the soil. That's true with a lot of trees and shrubs also. Providing water quality benefits and also providing wildlife habitat. So there's a lot of cases where we can really maximize these areas and the benefits they're providing. So I want to talk a bit about where we're going with things, and we've been doing a lot of good things over time and kind of focusing on diversity, but I think there's certain things that we can do to really narrow in more focus on pollinators and provide more benefits. One is targeted habitat protection, really focusing on habitat corridors and habitat complexes, where these are areas where bees will have access to clean water sources, food sources, nesting sites, kind of all within these larger areas. And so that is something we focus a lot on with our Reinvest in Minnesota easement program. But I think there's opportunities to even focus on it more and look for opportunities where maybe there's really good areas for pollinators that we could be addressing and focusing on in the future. So, these act as a refugia that Bob was also talking about, providing these safe areas for pollinators. Also floral rich plantings. The Natural Resource Conservation Service has some programs that do something similar where they're focused on planting about 3 to 5 acres with real floral dense areas. And so there's funding through them to do plantings like that, and we're interested in doing these as well on our easements. We have opportunities through some of the easements that we're signing up now. We have funding where we can go in and do planting like this and really focus on a lot of flowers within smaller areas. And we may have pretty high diversity through the whole thing, but maybe this is going to be an area that we know is kind of away from any pesticide drift, that it's an area that's going to be really good for pollinators. And so I think there's some good opportunities for that. Also with beekeeping, I grew up raising bees, and it's something that I feel strongly about, and we are looking for opportunities on easements to provide habitat for bees. Beehives are allowed on conservation easements. There's also opportunities for these floral dense plantings. And I think one thing we're trying to understand, I'm going to be interested in hearing from some of the beekeepers that are here today about what native species you think are best for honeybees, because that's one thing that we don't quite have enough information on yet. And then also, is there a need for things like non-native clovers on sites? And there is opportunities for that on some of these easement sites as well. And so I'm interested in learning more about that, because that's one area where we don't think we quite have enough information yet and are trying to figure that out. And then finally, we'll be working on developing our resources more. We talked about our process of trying to collect more information, but we'd like to get more refined in our resources and our recommendations for different types of landscapes of how we can maximize pollinator habitat. And there's still a lot we're learning, there's a lot of research underway, so we'll be trying to collect that information refine our different resources so that we can be more effective as we move ahead. And so that'll be an ongoing effort, and I'm interested in talking to more of you about your experiences with pollinators. Thank you.